think that's 10 seconds. Okay, so my name's Rose Balistreri, and I'm with the Historic Water Tower Neighborhood Project with the BLC from UWM. And I just wanted you to maybe tell me your name and your address, and then you could just start talking about how long you've lived here, what your experience of the house has been like, how, we can go on from there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My name's LaurelManey, and my husband Charles Foote and I have lived here for 17 years. The address is 2215 East Woodstock Place. And prior to the 17 years here, we lived all of a block and a half away, just a block and a half east. So we were still in the area. We lived there for 15 years. So this is definitely from Milwaukee. This is where I feel this is home. Definitely, this is home. What direction do you want to go in?
Well, I would like to get some personal information, like biographical information about you and maybe your husband and your family. Are you from Milwaukee? What kind of work did you do here? And your husband? And do you have children? Were they raised in this house? Things like that.
Okay. So, is it possible for you to put that down on the table? I feel that I feel it's Milwaukee. I really enjoy that. I like old houses, and I like thinking about the history of the places and who's lived there and how they lived. So this definitely is the area that appealed to me. My husband is from Chicago. Originally, he grew up there. He has lived in the Midwest. He lived in Manhattan for a number of years. He was an advertising executive and actually creative talent for for advertising. He had his own agency here in Milwaukee for a while, and he had a family long before I came along. So when I married him, I was already a grandma. I mean, I became an instant grandmother. So we didn't raise children here. We've had 2 doggies here that we loved a lot. One of them is still with us, and you saw him inside. I'm currently an instructor at Milwaukee Area Technical College. I teach chemistry courses. Actually, I'm a pharmacologist, and I teach one course of that. I teach some chemistry, I teach some anatomy and physiology. Prior to that, that's really a second career for me. Prior to that, I worked at Miller Brewing for 20 years, and I made beer. So my biggest claim to fame is that I developed the recipe for Leinenkugel's Honey Weiss beer. It's the one that everybody's heard of, among all the other projects. And that was a small part of my career there. Mostly I was in the plant managing parts of the brewing process. So this was quite a different turn for me to take for teaching. And I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed them both. For an avocation, I've always been a gardener. The reason why we bought this house was because the minute we stepped inside, we had this beautiful view of the whole backyard. And this has a large lot, and it seems to occupy the whole middle of the block. So we've been fortunate that way. Before the trees around us grew quite so tall, we had a fabulous view of all the different styles of architecture around here. There's kind of a Georgian sort of brick house. There's like a Queen Anne, I would call it. There's a couple of federal style Cream City brick ones. There's Joe Libnock's house. What does he call it? Something French Norman, kind of Norman. And then these just beautiful old houses. Many of them are 2-family. Were originally built. This was built as a duplex. It was built for investors. I don't know who originally occupied it. I don't remember what I read about it. When we moved in, our neighbors next door, who've been our good buddies, good neighbors, and gardening neighbors, they told us that I grew up in New England, in north of Boston, and there are a lot in Beverly, Massachusetts. It's 20 miles north of Boston. There are lots of historic homes all over the North Shore, all over Massachusetts, of course. And I always loved seeing them. I liked living in an area where we were literally in touch with history. So homes that were 400 years old easily are still being lived in today and appreciated. And I've always felt a very personal attachment to the places where I live. And I'm most comfortable. That's where I found this area right here in North Point South specifically is the area that I was most attached to and that I felt most comfortable in all Milwaukee. So that was the beginning of the story. And Charlie grew up in Chicago. He's lived in other big cities like Manhattan. He's lived way out in the sticks in Peoria. I guess that qualifies as the sticks. No, it's beyond Peoria. I can't remember the name of the town. So he's lived in a number of places. He had a career as an advertising executive and as a creative writer in advertising. So we both agreed we liked it here. Should I pick up?
That's good, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it
That's
in
why.
the
That's right. Okay, so we're gardening now. So came in, saw this. I was looking for a home that we could live in that would be all one floor without any steps up, because Charlie is 20 years older than I am. Where we used to live, even though we were on the first floor, there was a significant number, it was a half flight of stairs to get up to the first floor level. And he's had some medical problems from time to time, and it became very difficult to manage in a situation like that, to get him in and out. So I wanted something that would be absolute roll in, roll out access, and I wanted something with a yard, a fenced in yard, and I was amazed when we found this. The front of the house is nothing particularly beautiful. It's undistinguished, especially in a neighborhood like this. But this is absolutely primo for me. So here's where I think culture comes in for me too. My grandmother was an avid gardener, and her sister, two of them. They both had beautiful yards and gardens with private spaces and open spaces, grape arbors, raspberry patches. I just adored being in my grandmother's yard, and I sometimes think that when I arrange a garden, or whatever I've done here has almost been attempting to recreate in my own way, recreate her yard. And that's a real nice connection with the past too. When I dig in the garden here, this is real clay soil. It's a lot different from New England. So for 30 years, here and in the condominium, a block and a half where we were used to live, I've been digging for years, and I come across these big layers of clay, and it's that light brown Cream City brick clay. And when I dig through it, I have to take the stuff out. You can't amend it. There's just too much clay to it. So I'm always throwing it out or putting it at the back of the garden, putting it somewhere where I want to raise the level up, and I'm going to cover it over with mulch. Oddly enough, because this is a historic area and other buildings have been in the area before, not only do I come across the strata of clay, but I actually come across pieces of the brick that they made out of that clay. Now, to me, that just sets up these vibrations in me, like I am seeing this. Now, here's a piece of actual brick that's formed brick that's been, either it was rubble from another structure that came down, or else it might have been brick from when they built this house, because the first story is faced with Cream City brick. And here's a piece of that clay. When it dries out, it would dry out to the color of the Cream City brick. You can just feel it. It is hard as a rock. You can't do anything with that other than make bricks. You can make bricks. There's actual brick. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Very cool.
It really is. Somebody told us, only I don't know if this is the case or not. Somebody told us that in this particular block, this exact block, that there were carriage houses here for the big mansions that were in Back Bay Park. The big houses. Maybe they weren't mansions. But the big houses that were in Back Bay Park, there was a circle of them. There's that beautiful clay again. Cream City brick clay. Ooh. Those houses that were taken down in the 1960s apparently may have had their carriage houses here. It could be. I'm not sure. Somebody probably knows this and I don't. But somebody suggested that that's why I kept finding pieces of the Cream City brick in the ground here, that maybe the carriage houses had been taken down and at a later date then, you know, for instance, that house is from around 1930 something, the early 1930s. Joe's house, I believe, is from the late 1920s. So it may be that this block was later developed again, and maybe those pieces of brick were from some earlier structures. Otherwise, they would be the rubble of the houses as they were built here. I saw that where we lived over at the Woodstock condominium. Between the two buildings that make up that condominium, there was a large grassy lawn and gardens, and there used to be old brick houses. There were some old little frame and brick houses, and when I dug there, I would find the same thing. So I just think that it's really neat to have this relationship between the gardening I do currently and the archaeology I find when I dig, and the house I live in now, and the houses all around me, and to think about how those relate to each other. And family growing up here, I guess I addressed that with the doggies, that we didn't.
No, that's fine.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't have to dwell on that.
Oh, okay.
Before,
No, I'm just wondering if you have other suggestions. It's like I get on a theme and I can do that, but then
yeah, and then
I don't have a
on
whole
with it.
monologue made
Right,
up, so we
right.
could.
I really loved what you were saying about these connections with the gardening and the neighborhood. One thing I was wondering, you said that there were houses or places that were torn down in the 60s?
Yeah, when O'Donnell came in, County Executive O'Donnell.
Oh, it would be fun to maybe talk about that.
Sure. And I know about it from that book, North Point South, by Shirley Dufresne MacArthur.
Oh,
Have you seen that one?
No, but I'm sure that Arjit is familiar with
Yes.
it. But that would be a fun thing to talk about. No one's mentioned that yet.
Really?
I mean, but we've only done 2
Yeah.
interviews.
Yeah.
So they might have it mentioned somewhere
Well,
else, but it doesn't matter.
Did
But
you interview Barbara Elsner already?
I did not,
or-
but another group did.
Uh-huh.
So she's been, I know everybody was saying, oh, Barbara's,
Yeah,
she's
Barbara is very knowledgeable, but she wouldn't be intimately. I mean, this little area isn't her intimate area, you know.
there used to be a house that it was in a kind of a little triangle over here. But you know what? It was a really long time ago.
You know where that big nursing home is, that big brick nursing home? There were
Yes.
frame houses all in there.
Yeah.
And just up the street on, I never can say the name of it, the little bit of a street that's like a mews.
Yes.
That got turned
That's
around, yeah.
right.
Yeah, that kind of
Well,
got changed.
Let's talk about some of the changes that you're aware of that have
Oh, sure.
happened in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I said, I enjoy this part of Milwaukee because of its history, and I like looking at the old buildings and feeling the history that emanates from them. A couple of things. I've had this intimate connection with 2 neighbors, and we've been so fortunate to have these 2 wonderful neighbors, and I love having their gardens kind of seep into my garden and vice versa. I like looking at all of the houses, the historic style of the houses around us. And then what's missing, the part that's missing that you're asking about, is the houses that aren't here anymore. or the buildings that aren't here. And, you know, I think maybe I've come across some of them when I dig up pieces of brick from the ground that I'm digging in. But then I've seen in books, and I've heard about houses, quite some grand houses that were east of us here in that park, that nice little park, Back Bay Park, that itself was actually a development. It was a circle, a big circle drive with beautiful homes around the perimeter, facing the lake, or maybe facing the circle, but backing onto the lake. So I've seen pictures of those. I understand that it was in the 1960s. There was a move to try and develop better traffic flow and get a view of the lake. Those houses had fallen into disrepair, and in fact, this whole area had fallen into some disrepair. Houses had been cut up into multiple dwellings that weren't originally meant to be. Like ours was meant to be two-family, but there were ones that had been cut up into almost like rooming houses. So those houses, those old ones, had gotten torn down, and it's kind of too bad. It would be so interesting to have captured that, to be able to see them today. It stopped right at the north edge of Back Bay Park at the Van Alliers house. And I'm not sure exactly how that process stopped. I'm just really, really thankful it did. I should show you a picture. Since you've been back there, have you been back there to see their house? I'll show you a picture of what the whole house was. Maybe they showed you that what's there now is only 1/3 of the whole piece that was there. So that whole thing would have come down. Villa Terrace would have come down. Everything all up to the water tower would have come down, and I'm so glad the process stopped. At the south end of that, there's a big stone house directly in back of where you're sitting on the corner. And when you walk in the park and you look into their property, you can see that there were beautiful concrete terraces that had been built into the side of the bluff there. And you can only imagine what they must have been like when they were in perfect condition. They've fallen apart. They're not used. Long since not used. But you could just think what a magnificent home that would have been, and similarly the others. There's one other house going just west from that on Lafayette, and it's an enormous, what would you call it, a cottage-style house, and it was just beautifully restored by people, and it's absolutely a gem, just gorgeous job. I think the Holton, I think is the name now, on the little sign on the list of owners that they have in front. And that one was saved because there was an old woman whose family had owned that. I don't know, it might have been Brumder. I can't remember. Anyway, whose family had owned it. She was very, very old, and they said she could live there until she died. And then the county would take the house. And fortunately, she lived a really long time, so that this idea, this craze to remove all the houses passed over us and was gone, and some people bought it and just did a gorgeous job bought it from the county, did a beautiful job of fixing it up. Yeah, so I'll have to show you. I've got a copy of that North Point South book, and you would see the map of where those homes were. So it's interesting to think if there were carriage houses here at one time that serviced those, stables essentially, that serviced those homes. It would be interesting to know it. It'd be fun to find that out. Let's pause again. I just look up where I got it. It was like in a magazine. It was from a magazine.
Russell Zimmerman.
Yeah.
You know what? I bet this is from his book. Lost Milwaukee.
You might have that. Yeah.
That book is really hard to find now.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that I know that. I mean, I've seen his other book. I mean, we have a book by him, but I don't think it's that title.
Magnificent Milwaukee, or something like that. But that's okay.
Yeah.
We maybe the Van Alliers, because that's one of the homes that was measured and photographed.
Yes, that
They
I'm
did.
sure that was documented then.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
But just so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then this is the book North Point South. So south of the water tower.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that a long time ago, and we have really been always interested in it. And there's Lafayette, there's Terrace, there's Woodstock. Yeah. So there's Terrace Avenue out here. There's the park. There's Back Bay Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that says nursing home. And this would be our lot right here. There's Joe Libnock. There's us. So it is a pretty big. I think Joe's and ours are the two biggest lots. And just because of the way his house is oriented, we captured the whole interior of the block. And there is a picture. Yeah, this is called Glidden and Lockwood's Edition. And this is now looking from Terrace continuing east. This would have been that right there in Back Bay Park, all of those houses.
Well, what I'd like to do is I will.
Oh, you're
This
gonna,
is gonna be
yeah, it's gonna be
terrible.
shadowed. You can do it in the house better, probably.
Yeah, why?
In the shade.
We can come back with a scanner,
Oh, sure.
and that attaches to a laptop, and actually just scan images. But I'll ask our.
I know they've got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know they
Shirley-
do.
what's her
Yeah,
name?
Shirley MacArthur.
Oh, okay.
But this was important to me to know more about the history and be able to see some of the houses, even some of the ones that I think there's our house from long ago.
Oh gosh.
I think the landscape looks better now, but
Oh my gosh.
I'm
yes.
prejudiced. Well, this was winter time too. Look at how young the birch tree was compared to what it is now.
It looks almost suburban.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. You're right. And it's
So was it always important for you to live in the city?
yes. Yeah. I think I'm really an urban person. I like being outside. I like being outside. I like visiting the country. I really enjoy visiting the country, but I don't think I would want to live there permanently. I don't want to have to drive a long distance. I like to be in contact with the things I need, and even more importantly, I need to be by water. I need to be near water, and this is as close as I'm going to get to the Atlantic Ocean. Right here, Lake Michigan is big enough water, and it certainly is noisy and active enough to substitute for the ocean. Yeah, I really enjoy that. This area is wonderful because I can walk to the lake and I can walk to the river. And I can go by the bike path to get to the river. I don't have to go over city streets. So the dogs and I have, for the 17 years we've lived here, 16 years, because we didn't get a dog until 1 year after we had moved in. So we've been covering the east side. We've been protecting the east side, patrolling the east side for the last 16 years. I'm wondering, when I used to give lectures about brewing, making beer, in that other career I had. One of the interesting lectures was about water, and of course the significance of water in brewing. Beer is 99% water, of course, but besides being in the contents of the beer, water was important for a lot of other reasons. Water is important for transportation, of course, historically important for transportation, and historically important for culture because of being able to communicate with far distances. So I don't know why that affects me, but it does. It has a big significance. Perhaps you have another question.
Can you think of any particular memory about living here that really stands out in your mind, or a certain event?
The key memory, but for this you have to get up and walk. You have to have a visual, because it actually involves Joe's house. See, what's so nice about being here and you're intimately, you can see your neighbors and so forth, is that you're participating in their lives. You get the benefit of, look at the landscape I get by looking at his house or looking at the Lucas's house. So you have to come over a little bit further. And you'll see there's a little balcony. See that little balcony right there? It's a bird. A bird. Oh, it's a nest. I see the nest right there. Oh, for goodness sake.
Oh, we really started.
Oh, yeah. So before we put this addition on the home, there was a pine tree here and there was a big hosta garden. And I remember one evening, this is some time ago, and he had like an 8-year-old granddaughter staying with him. And she had this summer night, and it was just dusk. And she came out on the balcony there with her little white, long nightgown on. And it just looked like something out of a fairy tale. She was so charming to see through the branches of the pine tree, see this little girl in her floaty white dress out there on the balcony. That's one of my enduring and favorite memories. I think that is important. Oh yeah, and can you get it?
I'm gonna go back a little bit.
Yeah.
God, that's so sweet.
That's somebody else's house. Can you distinguish what it is? Well, you'll be able to blow it up.
Yeah.
And he's got one right over there over his back lawn.
Look at how pretty that is. It looks like an English cottage or something.
You know what I'm trying to do? That used to be somewhere else. That used to be by our back door, and I finally figured to put it here when I developed this piece of garden. And these two things were framing that kitchen porch, and I didn't care for the style, plus they get rusty all the time. So I'm trying to think, what can I do with these? You're just sitting here waiting for a use. If you think of something good, tell me. I could almost have them made into an arbor if somebody could put braces between them. Mm-hmm. You can see what they do. They're just L-shaped.
Right. Yeah.
So two of them and, facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I could make another one of these. I can make a little arbor like that.
If they were sanding might be a big pain, but if they were sanded and just painted black, could they almost be used as a trellis?
Yeah, I think so. But they can't stand alone, so they'd have to be supported somehow.
Oh, I was thinking of a trellis up against.
Against the wall.
Against the wall.
Mm-hmm. Since now you're helping me with garden design. And we'll let the bird come back to her nest. Maybe I could put them up here. When we built this addition, it was with the idea of making the home so that we could stay here a long time. Mm-hmm. My husband is 85 now. And so he was, he's It was 4 years ago, so we knew that age is coming. We figured that out, and so we built out from the house and made a larger bedroom and a larger bathroom that would have have possible wheelchair access if it were ever needed. And when we did this addition, the reason why it has all these windows is that I wanted to feel like I was out here in the garden. I had to give up a piece of garden for this piece of the yard that I dearly love, so I wanted to make sure I felt like I still was in the garden even when I was in the house. And that really has been successful. That's been really nice.
So is this now your bedroom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's bedroom and more closet space and a much bigger bathroom. The upstairs had a view of the lake until other landscape intervened. So neighbors put in a hedge of trees, and it's really nice for privacy, and it's a nice background. But it was just funny that the rental unit upstairs had a better view than we did. Oh,
What's your garage?
It's in the front.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
People call that a snout house. Have you ever heard that term? Snout?
No.
When the garage is in the front and it faces, and it's a big prominent thing with a big ugly garage door or homely garage door facing the street. I've heard people call it a snout, like an anteater's snout. A snout house. Yep, so the garage is in front. I know I had an interesting story that when we first moved in here, our neighbors, the Lucases, had lived here for quite a long time. They'd been here at least 15, 20 years before. We got to become good friends with them. But she told me that, I don't know, it was a woman lived here, an older woman lived here, retired and rented out the top floor. And she had a beautiful rose garden where we have that walkway between our house and the Lucas's house. She had a beautiful rose garden. And they were sorry when the next owner along came and tore that out and made it nice for this house, but it took out this beautiful rose garden. Where we have a sunroom there, that was a screened porch. And so I think the woman's name was Ida. I don't know if it was Ida May, had friends over for cards. She would have card parties, and they would play bridge all afternoon and have lunch, play bridge, and have martinis or have drinks. And she said Ida, who had this beautiful rose garden and this lovely yard, would entertain all afternoon, and the ladies would all go home thoroughly relaxed from the cocktails. She had a nice life. So she obviously enjoyed the yard too. She enjoyed it. There were trees here. That was another thing that the Lucases told us, that this yard used to have more trees in it than what are here now. And I've found places where I know, at least 2 places, because there's a big sunken area where a tree trunk over so many years is still deteriorating. And no matter how many times I fill those in and level them, they have gone down. So even over the 17 years we've been here, there was a tree there, and there was one in the back corner. Right where that sunny garden, just in front of where that sunny garden is. So this would have been a very, very shady lot. It still is pretty shady, but it would have been even more so then.
So pleasant back here.
It is nice. I mean, it's daytime, so there's more traffic noise, but it is fairly quiet. It's pretty nice.
All right, well, I'm just wondering if maybe we should just stop and we could take some pictures.